try to alternate signs, so raise your hand if you want the microphone. First question today, Coach, if you will start with an opening statement, then we'll open it up for questions.
All right. Welcome back to another start here of college basketball season. It's always an exciting time. I think for our basketball program in general, we're anxious to get kicked off. It's been a long preseason. It's been a good preseason. Hopefully we'll finish up here in the next 5 to 7 days. But it's been, uneventful, so to speak, which is very rare as you start the fall term, where you don't have a lot of, hiccups, ups and downs, learning each other. I think our older guys have been very calm. They've been very good with their leadership on and off the floor. And I think our newcomers, two true freshmen and Joey Brunk, those three guys, man, they fit in seamlessly. They've been pleasant surprise, not only from the summertime, but also as we've started school here. And number one, how much they're embracing, the challenge of joining a group, and also the embracing the challenge of, striving to be the better players on our team, the better leaders. They're not waiting around to learn. So it's been a good group. And like I said, our staff, we've worked very, very hard to get to this point in terms of the off season and planning. And we're excited to get started like everybody.
Okay, first question.
Coach, you, I think, spoke at Evansville about wanting to get more motion in your offense. Is that a reflection on what you saw from your team last year, trying to get a little bit more off the ball kind of movement, a little less stagnation?
Well, I think, each team is different every season. You have to play to your strengths. This team in general, and looking at the parts that we have and how we're going to have to be built, we're going to have to be, much more difficult to deal with, which has to have a lot more randomness into what we do. We have to utilize our versatility with them guys that can play multiple positions together, and we're going to have to move that ball. And to do that, you're going to have a lot of concepts and action, to the way that you play. And I'm excited to coach this team in that regard, that we do have a lot of different guys, I think, that can play together that, may look the same and do some things differently. But there's some versatility, there's some interchangeable parts, and I think that's going to be the quest for this team is by far and away offensively is to have more movement, definitely have more ball movement, and play more people. And to do that, I think you definitely have to, spend more time on the concepts and guys playing the game together rather than just a play or two or a guy or two. It's going to be much more of a by-committee team on both ends of the floor, but from an offensive perspective, how we generate offense, how we score, how we're efficient is going to be through the bulk of the parts, not one guy.
Oh, me. Archie, you've talked about building chemistry, having a better chemistry than maybe you had last year. How do you build it? How does that just kind of happen organically, or are there things that you can do as a head coach to move that process forward?
Well, I think you're always on a quest as you guide a team, whether you're on the team or whether you're on a staff or you're the head coach, you're constantly trying to put people in situations where they learn one another better, they spend more time together, there's more communication and working together. I think, for me and learning how things go, especially with young people these days, they can very much, stay in their own lane, stay on their own phone. You name the setting, with young people these days, they very literally, they don't talk as much as they used to. So we're trying to put our guys in situations where it forces them to obviously communicate, be more active with one another always. But I think the one thing that's unique as you get older, as you have more familiarity with each other, you have more closeness. You're not as new. Last year's team had 5 true freshmen and 1 transfer, 6 new bodies. This team has 2 true freshmen and one new guy. Those older guys are all back. They're more familiar with one another. They're more familiar with the routine. They're more able to communicate, what to do, when to do it, how to do it. So there's definitely been some step up in that regard. I definitely think our team understands that from a staff perspective, there's a lot of pressure on us, as a group of people to really come together. And, to do that, I think definitely it's been more talking, more communicating, and more situations where we're forcing them to be sort of the driving force behind that. Because we do have a group of guys that, naturally are kind of quiet natured. I think that's where Joey has been a great boost with his voice. His personality has really helped our workouts. He's helped our locker room. The younger guys who get a year under their belt have changed. Robert's done a really nice job in our workouts. He's taken a concerted effort to communicate better, to talk better, not be quiet. So, I think, just in general, I think familiarity with each other, getting a little bit older with your younger guys, and then, having some influx of some new energy. A guy like Joey can really help the cause as well.
Now that you've had a chance to go through the summer and some preseason stuff with the new guys, how do you envision Trace, Duran, and Joey being able to fit together? And do you foresee lineups where two of those guys can be on the floor at the same time?
That's the old school, lineup right there. That's the big ball, traditional, two bigs. Can it happen? Absolutely. In my opinion, and how these guys find that niche will be their ability to defend together. And that's obviously the hardest part for two bigs on the floor. It's not offense. You can run a lot of different types of offense, especially when you have some guys who can score the ball down low. But could they play together and defend a team who doesn't play traditional with bigs? That'll be, the quest. Can those guys exist on that end of the floor a little bit? And very, very hopeful. Very, very hopeful with Trace. His lateral mobility, his athleticism, and watching him here early as the season goes, he knows he has to defend on the perimeter. He's going to have to do that to be able to play with other guys. And, he's going to have to learn early and probably go through some hard times, getting used to guarding college actions and scouting and whatnot. But for the betterment of him and our team, that's one thing I think that we're all hopeful for, is he can, take that role as a guy who can defend inside and out a little bit, because he's not a prototype typical big. He's very mobile. He's very athletic. He's got great endurance for a young player. He's just going to have to get some experience under his belt.
Kind of going back to talking about chemistry, talking about communication, how important is Rob? I mean, you put a lot on his shoulders last year as a freshman point guard, and it seemed like he stepped up a lot of the time, but maybe now asking for some of those intangible pieces to really come out. How important is he going to be for you?
Huge. Robert plays a big role. I think you saw our team last year at times when Rob, was playing effectively. He was healthy. He's a gamer. But with that gamer, as you get a little older, it's not about, there's no surprises anymore. You're expected to do it. And I think he knows that from my standpoint, as he looks at me, what I expect of him. And as the head coach, I look at our point guards in a very different manner than I do all other positions. I think it's the most important position on the team. It's the quarterback. And it starts with Rob, on the defensive end. He triggers us in a lot of ways in terms of his on-ball pressure and how he can establish, our defense in the half court. Offensively, playing the floor game that he needs to play. He's traditionally a pretty safe guy, which he does a good job there. And getting more confident, offensively with his shot. But the biggest thing is probably what you said early, is to have an extension of your staff a little bit in terms of what you expect. And he knows that now. He's been through it over a year. And like you said, he has had a lot of experience under his belt. He's been through a lot in his 1 year. And he's more prepared to handle the communication part of it. And he knows that that's a big part of, his job.
Yeah, you talked last year, and even at times have kiddingly talked about in the offseason about how the shooting has to be better. What have you guys done during the offseason, and how do you hope to improve the shooting for this team?
I think you work on it all. That's the simple thing, is each guy individually is taking some time here, and we're addressing it, working on it. And, I think there's been some improvement with guys. I also think the quality of the shots you get, is the key. The guys that are shooting the ball, and where they're shooting it from, how they're getting them, those are the good ones. And if that's the case, we'll have confidence in making them. But like I said, this team's built a little bit differently. Our versatility is more inside out than it is outside in. But I do think we have some guys that are going to have to stretch the floor for us to be effective, and that starts with our backcourt. Our perimeter guys obviously have to shoot it in, and we'll have to find some other guys that can add that niche. Demezy's a guy that we have some hope for in that regard. As a sophomore, he's going to have a role on our team, and one of the best things that Demezy does is he can shoot the ball. So, you got to start with that with him, and, hopefully adding Jerome into our mix here a little bit as we get started with the flow of the season. Jerome's best gift as a young player will be his outside shooting, and as he comes off of a year where he hasn't played, the rust and all that other stuff that you're going to go through and trying to find it, hopefully he can find some rhythm. But he's another guy that I think can shoot the ball a little bit.
Go ahead.
Speaking of Jerome, could we get an update on his status? I know you've given a couple through this.
Yeah, I think we issued a statement about his clearance and what he's been cleared to do. Jerome went through a very tough freshman year. A lot of guys go through injuries. A lot of guys have to sit. And that's hard for people. Jerome not only did that, but he also, had a condition that's not just an ankle sprain or a repair of a knee. It's a little different. So we've kind of listened to doctors, listened to trainers. Jerome's done his part. He's worked very, very hard to get cleared. Then when he was cleared, he did a very, very good job of fighting through the not playing, the rust, getting his legs back under him, his strength, his conditioning. And, we're proud of where he started at 5 weeks ago. As he started here in this 5 weeks, as he leads into October, he hasn't missed a workout. He hasn't been comfortable at all. With that being said, he doesn't obviously look to be the full strength Jerome that we inherited as he came off a high school season, but that's to be natural with any guy who's taken 6-7 months off. He's got to get his legs under him. He's got to get his basketball game back in terms of rhythm, catching, running, contact all of a sudden. He's bigger and stronger, yet he's not playing as strong as he once has. And I think all of that's just going to come with repetition of being out there every day. And we're hopeful. It's one day at a time, and we work with him, every single day. Communication is always the most important thing, and I suspect there'll be some days where he doesn't feel as good as the other guys, maybe as well. But we're all very, very hopeful. I think he's very, very grateful. I know I am very, very grateful of the doctors and the training staff and just our administration in general, how much work and information went into sharing and working towards getting him just back on the floor. So, and to his credit, he did his part. He worked very, very hard. So, he's, when you work that hard to get back off any kind of setback, there's a little bit of pride in yourself. So he's anxious to get back too.
Coach, obviously Trey Jackson-Davis is a freshman coming in. It's difficult to make an impact in the Big Ten, but he is a special player. Is he someone that you expect to have an input on Big Ten play once it gets here?
Yeah, no question. Tracy's going to have to earn it the old-fashioned way, by doing it every day, but he's doing that right now. Very, very proud of him, in terms of what he's done this summer and then how he's embraced this off-season. He's gotten himself in terrific shape as of right now. He's got to continue to go with that. His athleticism, his conditioning are all, very, very impressive. I mean, he's a gifted young guy, and he's coachable. He's a guy that sponges it up. He doesn't know what he doesn't know, and he asks questions, and he's improved as a player. But he's going to go through some really hard times. I feel like college basketball is harder for young bigs than it is guards, just because they're not used to the pounding and the size and in some cases in the Big Ten, the age difference that they get ready to see. So he'll go through that, but he's going to be put in a fire. I mean, he's going to be put in a fire. He was brought here to be put in a fire, and he can help our team immensely. I think, as you watch us play, he's got some confidence in him, and the more experience he gets under his belt, the better he'll be. He's got to continue to work on his game. He's got to continue to evolve as a player, but he's going to get pushed and he's going to get thrown in the fire, and he's going to have to earn it. But there's no better guy that to be around than him on a daily basis with how he approaches things.
Coach, it's your third year at IU. How do you approach this year differently than maybe you did your first year? And do you approach a season differently now than you did when you first started your coaching career?
Each season is a unique challenge. Each season is different. Each team is different, regardless if you return a ton or if you bring back a bunch of new guys. It's starting over. You have 10, 12, 13 brains that need to be reset and focused on the mission that we have as a group. And we're going to have to get some roles identified quickly. We're going to have to, get the new chemistry and how we're going to have to do things, put forth, and we're going to have to earn our way, just like every other team. But no, I don't change anything. I mean, every day's hard. Every practice is difficult. Every game that you prepare for is hard. It never changes. And this team is going to be, pushed. For us to have a great season, we have to be all locked in. We have to be all bought in. We have to play everybody that we have. There can't be a game or a day that we don't feel like, hey, we can use everybody. Every single guy in practice should expect to help this team, and I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing that everybody has a chance to contribute and help. And, how much is up to them. But, no, I think right now we're at ground zero. We're building our team. And, this team in general, as we've talked, there's some older people who have been with us for a couple years. And I think those guys obviously, hopefully, are our strength. Inside the locker room, more so than they are on the court. Inside the locker room is a huge thing for this group. Everyone's got to understand the importance of every day. And to max out everything that we have, every single guy's got to really, take care of one another. They got to be about the right things and be about one another. And, that's from me all the way down. This team has to have unbelievable humility. It's got to have a great work ethic. And it's got to, give more towards the other guys on the team to get the most out of them so we can be the best we can be.
Coach, Al talked about getting reps at point guard yesterday, and he seems to be a player who's shown steady improvement throughout his career. What have you seen kind of that might be different from him, that might kind of jump him to another level from this offseason to 2019?
One, he's a great person. He's always been about the right things, and he continues to be the same way right now as he was when he got here. That's a credit to his family, and it's a credit to, how he approaches things, not only in a basketball perspective, but just in general. He's a great guy. He's a great person to have on your team. He's a great, guy to go to class. I mean, he's a great guy. He takes a lot of pride in his individual improvement, and he works at it, and he's a much better player. He's stronger now than he has been in the past. He's heavier now than he has been in the past, and now he's experienced now a lot of minutes, in a 2-year period. So we count on him to do a lot. Definitely, without question, I see him playing a lot more point guard for us this year. I feel like that's going to be something that's going to help our team. It's going to put, if it's not Rob or Devontae, it's going to put him on the floor as an older player with the ball in his hands. That's important. I think the second thing is it has a chance to maybe play some other guys off the ball that can do some different things as well. But he'll play off the ball as well. He's one of our more consistent shooters, and he knows what we're doing, for the most part. But he's been a terrific teammate since day one, and right now we really count on him being not only a terrific teammate but a terrific leader for us.
Yeah, Coach, last year you were one of the top-rated defensive efficiency teams in college basketball. How do you assess this group defensively this year, and what are your thoughts about, in terms of how you guys will be able to match up scheme-wise, both team and individually?
Well, from an identity perspective, we always want to be a hard-playing, tough-minded team that competes and plays, hard on both ends, but in particular defensively, from year one, gradually improving to year two, obviously adding some new players, some young guys into the fold, and having a core group that came back for our second round. I think our defense was better against great competition at times. Weren't as big as we needed to be. Obviously I think at times when we were able to play a little bigger last year, it helped us. And I think this year's team will start off in that mode of a bigger team inside. So, hopefully with the added size, it helps you on the glass, it helps you around the basket a little bit more. You would hope that your returning players, obviously from a system perspective, can really hit the ground running and help your new players. Although Joey's a new player, he's a college player who's coming in, who's competed and played at a high level, so he knows what it's like in terms of effort level. But we got to get everybody on the same speed in our scheme, and personnel groupings are everything in terms of matchups. But our system is in place, and if we embrace and we buy in on that end, good things happen. And, I know we'll teach it the same. So I think defensively this team has a chance to be pretty good. It has some size. It has some real size, 3 through 5, where you could be 6'7", 6'8", 6'10", 6'9", where you have that type of front line size around the basket and on the glass, protecting the paint. That's That's sort of what the league is built on. Backcourt, you have, Devontae in his third, Al in his third, Robert, who's a terrific defender, and you have Armand, who's a very intelligent freshman who will be able to pick some things up, defending the backcourt. And you need Demezi and Jerome, to get more experience and find their way on the perimeter. Being able to defend, on the perimeter is something that those two guys are going to have an adjustment at. But, they give us some versatility as well. Justin Smith is an integral part of our defense. He was able to go as a freshman to a sophomore, and, in our good moments and our best moments and some of our best wins, he was integral in what we did. Not only, how he played offensively, but what he did for us defensively. He's got versatility where hopefully we can move him, back and forth from the perimeter to the small forward slot. And to me, he's as capable as a defender as there is in college. I mean, he's as good as it gets in terms of talent and athleticism. His mind's right, and he's really focused. He's really, to me, will be one of the better defenders in the Big Ten.
Coach, obviously, last year losing 12-13, that was kind of the big turning point of the season. I mean, what were your biggest takeaways from that, and what can you kind of look at to do differently this year to ensure something like that doesn't happen again?
Well, it was very odd to go through. I mean, I don't think a lot of people had been through that type of streak before. When you hit adversity, whether it's one game or whether it's two in a row, you're constantly on a quest to be able to get back on your feet and get up off the mat. And it takes great character to do that. It takes stay with it, through tough times. And part of it is you have to be mature as a player and understand that in this day and age, winning is great and you're all good. Losing one game, doesn't end your life. At the end of the day, I think so many times you can compound a loss and make it a lot bigger, a lot harder to deal with the way you approach things, the way you listen to things out in the general public, how you handle the adversity on your own. And I think that maturity will be a huge part of the development of this team, is to not get carried away with the outside noise, the negativity, the cluster that everyone deals with in athletics in this day and age. You have to be able to stay tight. You have to be able to stay calm. You have to be able to have great togetherness through those times. And that's something, I think, as you looked at our team towards the end of the year, being able to even find a way to get off the mat, what were the key things? Well, they never stopped working to progress. Certain individuals stayed with it and had their best moments towards the end of the season. So there's always some things you can learn with, but I would say handling adversity, dealing with negativity when it's thrown at you, and rightfully so, you have to respond to those things in an unbelievably tough-minded manner. And from me all the way down, you have to be really, really locked in and focused on the next step, the next day, and you're not going to be able to do anything until you can get through those hard parts. And to me, that would be a great maturity lesson for our returning guys who have been here for a couple years, is to be able to, understand that those things happen, and the way you respond is the most important thing.
Okay, Rick in the back.
We're 20 minutes into this, and not much talk about Devontae yet. He is back as your leading scorer. He was terrific the last 7 games of the season, especially with his three-point shooting and other things. What do you envision from him this year, and what will his role be? Devontae did finish the season fantastic for us. I mean, if you look at the games that we were able to win towards the end of the season, or some of the games that we were able to play, we've always had sort of another perimeter player or two perimeter players really kind of play well. And when he's played well throughout his time with us, we've had some great wins. Consistency is the thing that we're looking for, but he's coming into his senior year. Mentally, he's in the best place that he's been since I've been here. His 5-week preseason and his off season has been very distractionless off the floor, and then on the floor, in the weight room, in the conditioning areas, he's hit all-time high marks. So he's good there, best he's been. He's our most talented offensive player, without question. And to be able to get the most out of him, you're going to have to live with him doing some things at times that probably, you'd like to take back. But for him to be able to be himself, for him to be able to do it at another level more consistently, he's got to have some more rope. And I think that's where guys like Al and playing the one more, comes into a little bit more place. Devontae, when he needs to score, we have to have the ability to put him in situations where he's more of a primary offensive weapon, where he's not bringing it up. He's more of a receiver than he is a facilitator. And I think, the way that he scores, the way that he can create,
Devontae's going to have to play off the ball a little bit offensively for us. He's a talented player, but with those range, he's got to be solid. But I think Devontae's at a place where he's mature. He's a smart guy. He understands this is his last go, and hopefully he has the humility sort of to understand that how he finished last year, was a byproduct of him staying with it. He didn't have a great start in November when he had, back-to-back quad injuries. It took him out of the starting lineup, at the beginning, and then he sort of worked his way through it. But he finished in a way that was really, really positive. So hopefully he uses that as a driving force to get started this year.
I guess just to follow up on that, you talked about sometimes with him having to take the good with the bad. With a player like him who can, when he finds that groove, be so impactful, how as a coach do you strike that balance where you recognize that sometimes he is maybe going to do something that is frustrating, but that there's also that really impactful player in there? Yeah,
I do think there's a delicate balance, because I think he's the type of guy that obviously when he is playing free and confident, he feels like he can beat the world, and you need guys like that. You need guys on your team with that type of confidence. But there's a detriment when the plays are obviously getting you beat. And I think where he can respond differently and where he can understand a little bit easier this year is just because there's a few mistakes or maybe it's not working out well for him, that doesn't mean that it's not his day. He can just come right back on the next round when he gets his opportunity, because he knows he's going to get it, and he can get back to business, so to speak, of playing the game. He doesn't have to play the game worrying about making mistakes. He's just got to play the game and move on to the next play, because I think he's a guy at times that's hard on himself and sometimes gets down. And, when he lets a bad play or a bad half kind of steamroll the game, or maybe even two, rather than just moving forward to the next play because he knows he's going to be out there because he's one of our best guys. So, he's got to understand he's going to have some rope. He's got to understand that, sometimes he's going to have to, hit the single, so to speak, rather than the home run every time. But like I said, he's as impactful of a player on this year's team as there is. He is as talented as an offensive player as we have, and he's an older, upper-class guy who's been through a lot of games, and I think he can play with anybody, and we're going to need him to.
All right, Coach, thank you.
Thank you.